Welcome to the webinar, everybody. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us. And today we're going to be talking about real estate notes. And we have one of the real experts and innovators in the field in Eddie Speed. And so he's going to come on and give us a look at that environment from an industry standpoint and also some of his specialties and things like that. So for those of us who are individual investors, it's really going to be a nice learning opportunity. I'm going to take a minute here at the beginning to talk about IRAs and the purview that they have when they invest in notes, so that you have a sense of how your IRA can be combined with the information that you're going to hear from Eddie, and then we will go from there. So I guess I don't need a picture since I have the video up, but I do work for Advanta IRA. I've been in the business for coming up on 10 years, and I'm also a self-directed IRA investor. So I am one of you, or one of us, when it comes to planning for retirement and investing those tax advantage funds into alternatives. And I've definitely gotten into notes, but I'm looking forward to hearing Eddie today. We were chatting just a little bit before the broadcast started, and I'm already learning new things. So it's going to be a great presentation and fun to add this knowledge to what I've already been practicing a little bit. If you do have questions about any of the information, especially the IRA information in the presentation, you have my contact information there. And please feel free to reach out to me personally. Give me a phone call, send me an email. I'm happy to have a discussion about your goals and objectives, rules, anything you want to discuss from the beginning all the way to kind of high-level strategy. All the information in the presentation today is really for information purposes only. At Advanta IRA, we don't give any tax, legal, or investment advice. We certainly advocate you talking to your financial team, whether that's your attorney or your CPA, CFP, any of those folks, when it comes to decision making for your IRA. We don't give have any endorsements for particular investment strategies or investment vendors. We're really a very neutral part of the equation. As you may know, a self-directed IRA custodian, typically our role is just to document what it is that's happening in your account, so the account activity, as well as maintain the cash position and document that as well, so that you get to keep the tax benefits. That's really our role. We don't make any of the strategic decisions. That's really the role of the account holder. And so you tell us what you want to do with your money, and we help you substantiate that that's the activity of the account, and therefore you get to keep the tax advantages when the returns come in. And Advanta, as in and of itself, we're a full service custodial IRA provider. We also do HSAs and solo 401ks. We really feel like it's important for us to be a service organization. We're really a collaborator in terms of your strategy and helping you to make that a reality. We're nationwide. We have account holders all over the country, and we certainly are interested in making sure that you have the information that you need to successfully launch your investment strategy. A few things that are really important about an IRA custodian: it helps a lot to have an experienced team behind you, and we do. Lots of longevity amongst the employees, lots of expertise. And the reason that that's important is because then you can run a scenario past us and we can say, hey, this is something you might want to think about. Here's a time frame for that, so on and so forth. So really, as a collaborator for you executing your strategy, it's really important that the custodian that you've chosen has the knowledge base to be able to help. Certainly, it's important for your cash position to be secure. So at Advanta, your cash position with your IRA is FDIC insured, just in case. So that's one advantage that you have in terms of security. And I will also say that Advanta is kind of one of those it's a middle-sized company in our space, in as much as we've seen pretty much everything. So we know how to handle things, even exotic type investments, but we're not so big that you can't get somebody on the phone. And in fact, we pride ourselves on the fact that you can talk to us. You have my extension, you'll have an account manager's extension. In fact, every account holder gets their own account manager, so that you have a go-to person to go ahead and talk to about anything that's going on in the account, whether it's mechanics or strategies or rules or things like that. So these are all important parts of the criteria for choosing a custodian. And as I mentioned before, we're really intent upon you having the information that you need to invest in the assets that you want, and to do that, do it well. So we have a few initiatives that we do. Live events, obviously that's not that's not happening as much at the moment. Video events like this webinar, and a blog, which is really up to date in terms of what's happening in the world on a day-to-day basis. So please feel free to use our information resources as you're crafting your ideas about what you want to do with your IRA. Now, what we're talking about today, of course, is self-directed IRAs that invest in alternative assets. And a lot of people, of course, they wonder whether self-directed means that the account types are different, or that self-directed is an account type, and that's not really the case. The account types are exactly the same as you already know, the ones you're familiar with. So traditional IRA and Roth. Some people are unfamiliar with the fact that their HSA can also invest in these types of strategies. SEP and Simple IRA, as I mentioned before, we handle solo 401ks. So all of these account types can be quote unquote self-directed and purchase alternative assets. The thing that you need is a custodian that knows how to handle those assets. And so that's what you have in Advanta. But the contribution rules, the distribution rules, and the tax advantages of these account types stay exactly the same. The only thing that's really changing is that instead of those accounts purchasing stocks or mutual funds, it's purchasing a piece of real estate or a real estate note, like we'll talk about today. So really that's the substitution that we're speaking about, but the accounts themselves are the same ones that you're familiar with. And in terms of the broad scope of self-directed IRAs and what Advanta handles, we handle a wide array of the legal assets for IRAs. Obviously, life insurance and collectibles are two asset classes that are prohibited, but that leaves an awful lot of asset classes that are available. So you have real estate, whether it's residential or commercial. There's precious metals, so gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. Notes, as we're talking about today, and I'll even talk a little bit more about that before I bring Eddie on. You have a kind of an open playing field when it comes to notes as well, and things like, you know, oil and gas, agriculture, tax liens, almost anything that you know how to make money at outside of your IRA, you can make money at inside your IRA. You just have to make sure you have a custodial partner that will help you to achieve that goal. Now, thinking about private lending in a little more specifics, I mean, think about this. So the IRS really, it doesn't come in and dictate, oh, you have to have certain conditions on the notes, or it has to be a certain term or a certain interest rate or things like that. So the IRA holder, as the strategy maker for the account in general, is also participating in the type of note that they want to have and the structure of it. So an IRA can actually originate a note. You could actually go out and find a borrower, negotiate a deal, and create your own note. That's perfectly acceptable from an IRS perspective, as well as from an advanced IRA perspective. Or you can buy existing notes where somebody else originated it and you're now going to pick it up. And this is one of the things that I'm going to learn more about from Eddie today is, you know, notes that in a lot of cases are already in existence. Secured by collateral or not, the IRS does not weigh in on that. So if you want the note to be secured by collateral, that's fine. If you don't, that's also allowable from an IRS perspective. So you do have some flexibility in terms of how you want to participate in this asset class. I've also certainly seen people who will participate in an entity. So kind of their IRA will actually be an investor in a private entity like an LLC or something like that. And then that LLC will go out and make loans. So it really is debt based, but the asset itself is more of an equity investment. So that's also a possible structure for your IRA to invest in notes. Whole or fractional is fine. So if your IRA wants to participate as 100% originator or purchase 100% of the note, that's fine. But if you don't have the full purchase price, or you just don't want to have the entire note, you want to diversify, let's say, you can also do a fractional piece of that note as long as you're allowed to buy into the note. So that's allowable as well. Now, the only thing that the IRS really stipulates when it comes to notes is a couple of things. One is your IRA can't loan to a disqualified person. So you can't loan to yourself or your spouse, parents, grandparents, kids, grandkids, kids, grandkids of spouses. And some fiduciaries to the plan, but that short list of people are the only ones that are excluded from your lending initiative. The other thing is that the note does have to be a real economic transaction. The IRS is not going to let your IRA make a sweetheart loan to somebody that's no interest for 20 years and then they don't have to pay it back or something like that. That it has to be a real investment. On the other side of the scale, it does have to be legal, so it can't be a predatory type loan or things like that. So, but as long as you stay between those two wide parameters, the IRS really doesn't weigh in a lot on what the terms of the note are. But things to be considering as you were thinking about, hey, how do I want my IRA to participate, is how much am I going to loan or be a participant in a note? What's the interest rate? Is it interest only for several years and then there's a balloon payment at the end, or is it a steady stream of income? Sometimes that has to do with how old you are and whether you're taking distributions from your IRA or not. So there's a number of ways that your account type and your financial situation interact with the note that you choose. Length of term, obviously, some people are looking for a shorter term return and some people longer. Equity participation terms, so there are notes that do have some equity participation that's associated with them. So for instance, I know that I've made loans to a fix and flip person who then also, my IRA got some returns on the profits made from the flip. So a convertible note or something with equity participation is available as well. And then collateral and penalties and things like that, these are all things that you would think about in terms of evaluating a note. What happens if there's a default? How do I make myself whole, or how do I feel comfortable about the fact that default may be a possibility? So all of those things are kind of going into the hopper for you as you consider a note and what it is that you want your IRA to participate in. And with that, I'm going to leave that very broad landscape, and I will say that if you want to get in, have your IRA participate in notes, it's a very easy process, right? So if you have your IRA at an old 401k where you no longer work, or a 401a, 403b, almost all those tax advantaged accounts, if you're no longer working there, they're mobile, so they can be transferred or rolled over. So you would open your account with Advanta, very quick and easy. Then you would fund that account with rollover, transfer, and or contributions. So now you have an open IRA that's allowed to invest in notes and it has some money in it. And then you start looking for your note, whether that's a borrower or a note that you're going to purchase. And your account manager at Advanta will help you to assemble the paperwork that'll substantiate the activity, and away you go. The IRA disperses money for the note, and the payments come right back into your IRA and keep the tax advantages of the account type. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to Eddie now. I'm really delighted to have Eddie Speed, founder of NoteSchool, with us today, and I'm going to give him the screen here. But I will remind you that if you have questions from my part of the presentation or from Eddie's, please feel free to type them into the question box on your console. We're going to get to those at the end. So go ahead and type them as they occur to you, and we'll discuss them after the presentation or at the end of the slide presentation. And hopefully we want you to get the information that you would like to receive from this broadcast. So please feel free to type those in. So Eddie, I see your screen is up. Are you with me over there?
I am, Clay. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, and thank you for having me today. We're going to have some fun talking about something I've been doing for a day or two in the business, right?
I've heard that.
Well, thank you very much. So no, we're gonna kick off here and get started. So just kind of quickly, a little background. So I started in the note buying business actually in 1980. And this changed a lot over a long period of time. But we certainly, for about 20 years now, I've had a training business. We're still very active in the note business. And the case study that I'm going to do today is actually an asset that my wife and I did in our Roth IRA account. So I think that's a good way to kind of understand, you know, to see an asset and how it works, to see a case study. So we'll do that. And then Clay, obviously you jump in. I know they have questions. We'll try to maybe see if we can cover those at the end. I'll try to be efficient in our time, but we got a lot of slides to get through. So we will kick it off and get started. So let's talk about a note and how it's created, what it started like. So here is ownership of the property. The seller of the property conveys ownership to the buyer. And we call that a deed, right? It's really just a bill of sale of real estate. So now the buyer has the deed and they're going to pay for the property, except they don't have all cash, right? So they don't have all cash. And so then what do? They sign a mortgage note. They sign a debt secured by the real estate. So they sign a mortgage note, and we generally think of the bank holds the note, right? The bank made the loan. The bank actually technically owns the loan, and the buyer then pays the bank, of course, over time. Now, see the chains go around the house. The bank also has a mortgage securing payment of the house. So God forbid the buyer can't pay, then the house is collateral for the mortgage. Everybody pretty much on this training obviously would know that. So here's the other trick though. It doesn't have to be a bank. It could be just a seller of the property that also carried the financing. Seller financing. So in this example, the seller financer becomes the bank, not just the seller of the property, but the bank itself. So those are some basic principles of how a real estate transaction could be created with the note. So what is a note? I've been asked this thousands of times. What is a note? A note is a promise to pay. It is an asset. It's not the real estate, but it's secured by the real estate. I believe that it's easier than the real estate because you're the bank. Think about it. Would you rather be a landlord or the bank? Well, if all things were equal, Eddie, I believe I'd rather just be the bank. Yeah, me too. That's why I like it. So what is a note? Well, it's an agreement, right? It's a promise to pay. So it has the amount they owe, which is called the principal amount, right? It has historically an interest rate. It has monthly payments. It's payable over what we call an amortization term. And that simply means how long it takes the loan to pay fully out down to zero. Obviously, every month the first goes to the interest and the balance goes to the principal. And that's why a loan, will take 20 or 30 years to pay out. First to the interest, the balance of the money each month for the payment goes to the principal. And then the buyer comes in and then they sign the note. They put their John Henry on the note. So you've heard it called a seller finance note. You've heard it called paper. You've heard it called a home loan, a mortgage. Are they all the same? Yeah, I may use any of those terms in this presentation today, but they all interact and are really interchangeable. They're all essentially the same thing. Now, a principle in this business is a note is sellable, and whoever buys the note gets the same rights as the guy who sold it. So I could sell my note to Clay, and Clay then inherits the rights I have as the original lender. You can transfer the note, and with the transfer of note comes transferring all of its rights, including that it's secured by real estate, that they owe interest, all that type of thing. So the good thing about it is you can buy somebody else's note and inherit what they've already negotiated. Okay. Now, why do people like notes? So I am a former landlord, although I started in the note business, but I've been doing it now, closed 50,000 transactions. So I've done a lot of different things in my career related to notes, creative financing, real estate investors, so forth and so on. But you say, Eddie, in looking back in 40 years and 50,000 transactions, what is it you have learned what's the pattern? What's the thread? The thread is pretty simple. I like a note because it has mailbox money every month I don't have to go do a lot for, right? I'm the bank. They don't call me when the toilet backs up, and they don't call me to mow the grass. And I get a long-term payment stream. What I've learned with a note is you can essentially do work one time, but it has a long-term effect. Now, If you love rental property and you love tenants, I am saying Godspeed to you. Okay. I don't love rental properties and I don't love tenants. I love people. I love working with people. I don't like being a landlord. It's just not my thing. And if it's not your thing, this is a great alternative. I do hear a lot of burnout landlords come to me and tell me, oh my God, you know, I had it, and then 2 years later, then all of a sudden the tenant moved out. We had to spend $1,800 refixing it. Then I went out and got another tenant and got them back in it, and then all of a sudden, the air conditioner went out, or whatever, right? So those are pains that I find that some landlords experience, that they love notes because you're not having to go manage the property that the tenant is occupying. That's not your thing. You just have a loan secured by their property. So an underwriting concept here is you have the buyer, you have the loan, and you have the collateral, right? So the idea here is, will they pay? The loan says, how much will they pay? And then of course the collateral, and you see the chains around the house. The collateral says, God forbid they don't pay, right? Will they pay? How much will they pay? And if, God forbid, they can't pay, what's my collateral, right? So here's a case study. Here's a house. This was actually in a Memphis suburb. Now, we bought this asset a few years ago, and I like this. I like using this case study. It's not so much that I don't have a case study of a deal we closed last week, because trust me, we closed the deal last week. But the deal I like about it is this deal has worked out really well. So people sometimes want to say, well, okay, you bought it, how'd it work out? I can tell you this worked out well. This has paid really, really, really good money income to our Roth IRA account. So nice house, what I call the soccer mom house. The loan balance, they owed $160,000, $160,316 at 6% interest, and the payment was $1,081 a month, $1,081. Now that does not include taxes and insurance. That's just their principal and interest payment. Remaining term was pretty long, 271 months. That's about 22 years, something like that. So pretty long term. And so the buyers, what we'll call their skin in the game, is that they only owed 73% of what the property was worth. Their loan balance to property value ratio, loan to value ratio, was 73%. From an underwriting perspective, pretty solid deal. The house was worth $220,000. So you like the buyer's skin in the game? You feel good with that? We did. So the loan is amortized down to now they owe $160,000. So it was originally like a 30-year loan, and now it's paid down. And so they're paying 6% interest. And our Roth IRA account bought the entire note. So we bought and inherited what the original seller of the note owned and what they were entitled to. So now we're the note investor, and we're entitled to collect $1,081 a month at $271 a month, right? So here's the loan balance, right? The balance of the loan was $160, but we didn't pay $160. We bought the note at a discount. So our price of the note was $105. Now, let me be clear about this. We are in the note buying business. We're fairly well known across the United States. I set up the note system for home investors, the ugly house guys. I've taught thousands of real estate investors how to create seller finance notes. I run NoteSchool, okay? So I'm connected, right? And we work at it every day, right? So I'm trying to make sure that you understand, at this price, this was not a Noteinabox.com, go to a website and click the button and buy a note. I know where those websites are. I know how to find those notes, but that's not how we found this note. So we made a little better deal because we knew how to go find it and negotiate a discounted price. So we only paid $105,000 for a $160,000 note, which means that we bought the note at a discount of $55,000. Okay. True story, fair market condition, yes. Is it a super passive note investor strategy? No. You'd have to go find it, and you'd have to go negotiate it. Now, I run Note School and I teach people how to do this. I've taught thousands of people how to do it. But that I'm trying to make sure there's a difference so that somebody doesn't go, oh my God, yes, I'll go buy that note secured by that property. And Eddie, I'm going to earn like a 12% return on my money every year for the next 22 years. The market condition isn't quite that passive today, but I can tell you with 1,000% integrity, we did buy this note and we did pay that price. So because we bought the note at a discount, we funded 105, but we're getting the income off $160,000 debt. Plus, we bought it at a $55,000 discount. If I plug this in my financial calculator, it's going to say per year, Eddie, per year, your $105,000 is producing a 12% interest on your investment per year. Let's keep going. So dollars paid back, we bought 1,081 bucks. We're going to get 271 of those payments. Total dollars is 292,951. And what did we pay? We paid 105. That's why people like the discount note business. Like, it's pretty clear. This is why people like it. So this is assuming the loan pays exactly per the terms of the note, no more, no less. This is an estimate of income based on everything remaining exactly the same. The loan doesn't pay off early. It doesn't go into default. They don't prepay any. Like this is a look forward. But here's what we get for a $105,000 investment. What do we get? Mailbox money, not landlord money. Mailbox money. In fact, this loan is serviced through a servicer, and we don't have to collect the payments. We don't have to tell them how much taxes how much interest they pay at the end of the year. We don't have to monitor the taxes. We don't have to monitor the insurance. That's automated. We use a loan servicer, and for a modest fee every month, they do all this, right? And way less money than you would pay a property manager to manage your property. So, you like it so far? This is why I've been doing it 40 years. I've not found anything better. Am I familiar with other models? Very. Do I like them as well as this? No. What I own in my self-directed retirement account are these assets. So total payback is $292,000 of mailbox money, right? We did that math. Now let's go back to this concept again, because I want to talk about risk management, right? Let me say something really important. I would be considered a fairly seasoned discount note buyer by anybody's standard, right? I've bought thousands of notes, tens of thousands. I've looked at hundreds of thousands of notes. The deal that you pass up is not the deal that will keep you up at night. I believe in teaching somebody how to go look at a deal and say, will this deal be good to you a long time in the future? So the core principle of is, I have somebody that owes the money. The question is, will they pay? Why do I think they will pay, right? Their pay history, their credit, if they don't have a pay history, their equity in the property, their circumstances, the neighborhood they live in, the house they live in. Are there roses in the flower bed? Do they seem to have emotional equity? Let me just tell you something. Right now, in the market condition, who do you think is happier living in their house? A tenant or a homeowner? Who do you think's happier? Somebody living in a house or somebody living in an apartment? Right? So these are just core principles, right? You can draw your own conclusions. You may not vote with me in how I believe, but I will say that these are decisions people are making. We at least need to be thinking about the decisions that they're making, right? The second thing is the loan. How much will they pay, right? What does the loan call for? What's the interest rate of the loan? How long is it payable? And of course, the collateral itself, which is oh my God, they can't pay. Here's why collateral is important. I teach people to buy notes on good properties in good neighborhoods where the guy wants to live in that house and in that neighborhood a long time in the future. So here's a conceptual picture. Here is the total value of the house. Total value of the house, that's the line all the way from the top to the bottom. Now, I'm gonna saw about in the middle of that, and that's what we paid for the note. So our investment in the note compared to what the collateral's worth was about half, 48%. We paid 48% of what the property is worth for that note. So God forbid they can't pay, am I in good shape? God forbid. Yes, I'm in very good shape. So let's just sort of underwrite this deal. Let's just kind of like think about taking a blank piece of paper, draw a line across the top, draw a line down the middle, put the good on one side and put the bad on another, and let's see where we land. No deal is perfect, but do you get more perfect than less perfect? And the scale says to buy it. That's kind of how Eddie would underwrite a deal. So I got a great loan to value, right? I got a recent good pay history. I got a great neighborhood. I got good title, so there's nothing jacked up. I have a first lien position on this property. The property taxes are paid. And the negatives, well, it's a long-term note. People go, golly, it's 22 years. Odds of this loan paying off early are probably 100%, by the way. The buyer had been in bankruptcy. So I said they had a good pay history, and they do have a good pay history. But somewhere way back a few years ago, they got in trouble, and that loan was in bankruptcy. By the way, that's why I got to buy it at the part of the reason I got to buy it at the price I bought it at. Okay. So they had been in bankruptcy, but they're paying, and they seem to have been cured, right? I don't have some deep underwriting financial package on them. I just have a pay history. The guys have been paying for years. They don't send the new bank statements and financial records and stuff to their servicer every month. So I just have to assume that their financial condition is the same that it was back then, and I may not even know what that was, right? But I have a solid pay history. Think of it, you're the bank, the positive, you're the bank, you're not a landlord. I like that. That suits me. Now let's talk about family legacy. So my father-in-law got me in this business in 1980, a young kid at 20 years old. And Clay, let me assure you, I was clueless. I was clueless as in clueless. I thought a loan was being by myself when I started.
That's hard to imagine, Eddie.
No, but that was, but once again, I got started. My father-in-law really was a brilliant guy. He and a partner really pioneered buying seller financing in pretty much all of the South, right? That, by the way, that was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So I got started. Of course, you know my wife Martha, and so we married a couple of years after I got started with them, and we moved to Texas and built a note buying business and have lived here since. Although we buy notes all over the country, and but my father-in-law sadly passed away 23 years ago. So now I have a mother-in-law and a wife that are grandmothers, right? And what I've learned is that at 23 years, we've kept my mother-in-law in the note business for 23 years after my father-in-law died, right? And so now what we've realized is we have 4 generations that are somehow affected by notes. And I think a lot of people, when I tell that story, people later tell me, hey, that meant something to know that was your situation, and I start seeing my situation. So that's why I tell that. Now, another thing, Clay, that I'm a really big believer, is because you're going to have some people that are on with us today, and they're not, well, let's just say they're not you and I's age, right? I mean, within a 10 or 15 year period, you and I are in the same age range, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there's people on here and they're like, when you and I were 20 or 25 years old, and they're like, this retirement account stuff doesn't relate to me. I don't care anything about that because that is 35 years, 45 years in my future, right? Well, let me just tell you something. You and I know that a health savings account and a Coverdale educational account, that relates to the young person, right?
You bet. You bet.
And so don't draw a circle around it and say, I'm not interested in this kind of a strategy. Tax advantaged accounts is what you guys call them, right, Clay?
That's right.
So you're saying I'm not interested in those. Let me just tell you something. It fits everybody in the family. So here's a little bit of how my family dynamic is. This is Nana. This is my mother-in-law, right? Now, my mother-in-law is the sweetest person I've ever met. So when people tell mother-in-law jokes, I'll admit to you, I don't get it, right? Because they ain't nobody better than that one, right? That's the old gal I've been married to for 37 years. That's Martha. That's my son, who is a fireman and a paramedic and a part-time note guy, right? And now Martha and I have a grandchild. This is Colt. This is Wood's son. That's our first grandchild. Okay, 4 generations. So now all of a sudden we've got the retirement account strategy. Okay, well, my mother-in-law did not have the same retirement account that Martha and I formed. So the structure that we do with the Roth IRA accounts and the self-directed 401ks and the SEPs and the simples and stuff, Clay, when Mr. Shoemake, my father-in-law, structured all this 30 something years ago, that's not exactly the most common thing that people did, right? But it is a retirement related account, and we've kept my mother-in-law in the note business all of that time. Now, we would be foolish in my mind not to take advantage of a health savings account, right, Clay? I mean, wouldn't that be crazy not to do that?
The tax advantages would say that you should do it from even if it's just for taxes. Holy cow, it's a powerful tool.
Crazy math. They let me deduct $6,500 like it's an interest expense, but it's to contribute the money into my health savings account. And then I never pay profit on the gain, right? For
right.
Taxes. You don't need a calculator. And then we've got our kids, and it could be nieces and nephews. So isn't it true that my mother-in-law can contribute to baby Colt's CESA account?
Yep.
Their Coverdale educational account. Can Martha and I contribute?
And the HSAs too, as a matter of fact.
So understand that it's not just the money I could put into it, but somebody else could contribute, correct?
That's correct.
So there's some crazy advantages, but sometimes people have a limit in how much money they have in the account. Is this a fact?
That's true. All of us do. Yep.
Okay. So if you had 105,000 times many in your Roth IRA account, who wouldn't go buy the note we just bought, right? I mean, that's a killer good deal, right? If you think it's not a killer good deal, you need to come to Note School and let me make sure we teach you that is a killer good deal. If you wouldn't buy that deal, you have no tolerance for this business, right? That's a good deal. And that's why I like it, because it's just a good, simple deal that without a deep level of training, pretty much common sense tells us, yeah, if I had enough money, and by the way, my mother-in-law had that much money, right? I have never used a leveraging strategy with my mother-in-law's retirement account. I just kept her money deployed.
Right.
I don't need to go any kind of a lever strategy and stuff. But Martha and I want to go do a lot of deals, and we sometimes would run out of money in our retirement account. Here we've got a 25-year-old fireman's son, right? And now he has a son. And now how are we going to fuel their retirement accounts? So let's talk about utilizing the HGTV buyer. Now, you know who they are, don't you, Clay?
You're gonna have to like me.
They love HGTV. They are glued to these house flipping shows. Okay. So let me give you a little history. I know you're over there in Atlanta, right?
That's right.
I know a bunch of those high volume guys in Atlanta. In fact, I know the couple in Atlanta that did flip in Atlanta, right?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And so here's the deal. These house flipping shows and the people that watch the shows, they became enamored with buying property, but they didn't have any way of buying property. And so they started buying hot properties from active real estate investors. In fact, they call the business wholesaling. Okay? So the reason wholesaling became a thing is because that HGTV buyer would let that seasoned real estate investor flip a deal to them and make 25 and 30,000 bucks.
That makes sense.
The seasoned landlord like you and I, we would never let a house buyer make that kind of flip fee. So the rookie, the guy that doesn't know better, the HGTV buyer, he's the guy that drove and fueled the house flipping business. I've been doing this 40 years. I've been around. I know all the cycles. I know where all the puzzle pieces are. The problem is that after he's done a couple of rentals, guess what he's not anymore? He's not enamored with being a landlord, right? So now he is what I call a burnt out landlord, because now he has experience. Before he had enthusiasm.
So it plays on that continuum of how much energy do you want to invest for the money, right?
I mean, listen, I've speak at, realtor, like national trade shows, main stage, and I describe this guy and I describe this story, and they're not looking at me like I'm wrong. They're nodding their head like a puppy dog in the window. Anybody that's out there in the space knows I'm telling the truth. You may not like it to be the truth, but it is the truth, right? So I say there's the place for everybody. It's the same guy that was buying houses from the wholesalers, right? So now we're going to turn $1,000 into crazy money with your retirement account. This is what I call being a deal architect. So let me ask you a theoretical question. If I owned a pizza shop and it cost me $6 to make a pizza, how could I make profit? Oh, well, I know, Eddie, you could sell it for $12. Good idea. Okay. That's make it low, sell it for higher, right? Or what else could I do? Could you sell part of the pizza? Yeah, you could sell it by the slice, right? And if you sold it by the slice, if you made that pizza and it cost you $6 to make it, and you could sell each slice for $2 each, how much do you have invested in the back half of that pizza? Nothing. If you could do it to a pizza, you can do it to a note. So here's the concept. Remember those payments, those long stream of payments, those payments that are payable out over 271 months, that long period of time? Well, you buy those with your self-directed retirement account, right? You buy that stream of payments, then you turn around and you sell the front part of that note to that HGTV former landlord dreamer that now decides he would rather be the bank than a landlord. And he buys the most valuable part of the notes because he buys the payments that are due immediately, right? And you stretch out and figure out how many months you need to sell him, and he covers that strategy. Lets you use incredible leveraging. Okay, so let's take this note. We paid 105. He'll never go find that note. There's no way on God's green earth he's going to go buy that note for 105,000, right? So we did something he couldn't do, right? Then we come along and we say, we're going to sell you, Mr. HGTV burnout landlord. We're going to sell you 143 months of this note, and you're going to fund 104,000 bucks. What do we pay? 105. So now, for $1,000, we own the back 128 payments of that note. Would you do this deal?
Eddie's IRA did it. Look at that. So how did you choose the front selling the front rather than the back, Eddie?
Because mathematically, that's why they're going to write such a big check.
Right.
It's just math. Okay,
right.
it's just math on a calculator. I mean, it's not brain surgery. Now, this is why people come to Note School, Clay. This is the step-by-step. How did we do it? How could it have been done differently? What if you needed more money? What if you had less money? You know, this is why people come to Note School, right? This is a real case study. Actually, Martha did not write a check for $1,000. Let's just say it was less. Okay, so I'm doing you a disclaimer. These are round numbers, not absolute. The price is a specific number. We paid 105 for this note. Martha actually got the partial investor to fund a little more than 104, and she funded a little less than 1,000. Okay, but because I'm trying to be more conservative, as I told you, let's just say that those were the numbers. You actually could do slightly better than that. Okay.
Got it.
So the investor is earning about a 6% return, right? And then on our IRA account, now, you know, we train a lot of technical personalities, right, Clay, like engineer types. And they're saying, Eddie, could you tell me the yield on your $1,000 that turns into 128,000? No, actually like 145,000. I'm like, it's enough.
It's a big number.
It's enough. It's a big enough number. Now, this is a picture of an Excel graph. So the orange represents the note. The blue represents the partial investor. So the orange represents what I get if it pays off anytime prior, or what it pays at the end. So there's your partial investor. He gets 143 payments. At the end of that, we get 128. And look up, if it paid off early, that would tell you who gets what. The blue is what the partial investor gets. The difference between the top of the blue and the top of the orange is what we get if God forbid it paid off early. Now, where are we hurt? If it pays off early, are we hurt? If it pays to the end and it's just reassigned back to us, are we hurt? So at the end of 143 months, which is about 12 years, we get the note back. They owe us about 100 grand plus 6% interest for the next 10 years and 8 months.
But I see orange everywhere along that scale, right?
I say that orange probably should be green. So this is, once again, my definition of this is what NoteSchool says. This is how you learn to be a deal architect. Clay, the numbers are in this calculator. You got that?
Got it.
I don't need, the numbers are already in this calculator. What it needs is a pilot, right? It needs a pilot to figure out what you're trying to accomplish and how to go do it. Now, there's lots of different structuring techniques that NoteSchool teaches. We teach people how to buy property under really, really favorable terms and resell with seller financing. We teach anything related to really kind of creative financing and note strategies and stuff. We teach all of those different things. But for a client like yours that says, my problem is, Eddie, I would buy that $105,000 note all day long, right? I'd love to buy that $105,000 note. The problem is, I'm going to run out of times I can do that. I need to recapitalize. This is how you could do it. So let's just talk about it. So there's Martha. There's the note seller. He's on the left. There's Martha in the middle. Martha's what I call the deal architect, right? And now Martha has her HGTV guy. He's the guy that I call the passive investor. So Martha buys the note. Martha can buy the whole note and resell that note in 90 days. She could stack the deck and essentially flip the front end of the note before she ever funded the whole note. She could. Now, Clay, there's lots of things that you're going to want to understand about IRS restrictions before you go out there and do a whole bunch of this without some more knowledge or training. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And in fact, we have some questions already in the question box that relate to that. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, let me just tell you something. I'm not going to try to hold a 3-day seminar in the next 7 minutes. Okay. But I'll take a swing at them and talk about it. I'm doing this with full knowledge of some of the greatest legal and accounting advice related to your industry, related to buying discounted notes. Do you believe that's true?
I think that the folks that you talk about, I know of them as well. So
I'm saying, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I think I generally understand where the lines are. And I'm saying to you that I'm introducing a concept that really, at the end of the day, somebody says, I want to go learn more about this. So I'm not saying that I probably can give anybody on this call a punchline answer. I think there may be some sequencing of information to really fully affect what that how you understand that punchline answer. That's what I want to be careful of before we head down that road. So the idea is the investor funds 104, Martha funds 1,000. You stack those two together, and then all of a sudden there's your money, and then all of a sudden that's what covers the cost of the note. That is a way to do it, right? There are certainly conditions. And then once again, this loan is third-party serviced. So every month they collect the payments, they manage tax, the escrow account for taxes and insurance, they're licensed and compliant, and any kind of customer communication or workout or, hey, where's your payment, that kind of thing, then the servicer does that for me. And I get to stay very passive, right? And the money comes into the note holder's account, and usually it's direct deposit. And I'm sure, Clay, you see them coming into your account, and all of a sudden you just look in there and the money's in there, right? Which is pretty cool, right?
It's a good feeling.
And it is a good feeling. And the key thing is, it's particularly for the passive, for the partial investor, it's passive. And they earn a 6% return every year, right? Solid. And I guarantee you, if they owned a rent house of the same quality, they're not earning a true 6% return. I say that the odds are way in my favor that they are not earning a 6% return. The promoter said they were going to get a 6% return, and then they found out what invoices mean, right? So that's a strategy of how Martha uses it. So there's her mother. We invest in her retirement. Her mother also can do Coverdale educational account for great grandson Colt. Here's Martha. Obviously, we do retirement. Martha has a health savings account. Ba-boom, why would you not do that? And then, of course, we can contribute to Colt's Coverdale educational account. Then my son, well, obviously he could do a health savings account. He's got a Roth IRA that has no partials in it. And then all of a sudden he can contribute to his son Colt's Coverdale educational account. All can be done with low balance accounts. So, a deal architect. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to answer some questions. Clay, I'm not going to leave you for a second, okay? I'm going to answer some questions, but I want to show you how I can get you down the road with answering some more questions and understanding some more of what this little magic pill we just talked about could be, right? Now, this could fit real estate investors acquiring property. It could fit note investors. It could be a combination of the two. It could be you're working with a real estate investor that he's creating seller finance notes, and then your retirement account could buy those notes. So we're going to show you like some more dimensions of what that could look like. So you're going to go to noteschool.com/Advanta. What am I going to give you when you do that? Well, I'm going to give you that little spreadsheet that you liked. You remember the blue and the orange, Clay? I'm going to give them that Excel spreadsheet that is structured with those formulas, so they can just play with the numbers.
So that's an analyzing tool for them, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody wouldn't love to have an Excel spreadsheet, right? And that's just Excel, but it is formatted, right? It's the same thing, right? The numbers are in the calculator. It's just the pilot, right?
Understood.
And then we did a very nice short read, but powerful read. That's an ebook about talking about self-directed retirement accounts and investing specifically in notes. Okay. And then a lot of people go, well, if I did that partial, what would be the step by step? So what if I just gave you Martha's flow chart? Right? My wife, Martha, does this for us. This is her flow chart, what it looks like. So those are all downloads, and we're going to give you a free workshop. So we'll go take it another step deeper, keep digging into it. We'll give you a free workshop. So this registering for this is going to give you access to a workshop where we're going to just take it deeper into what that looks like. Now, with all that being said, Clay, let's go through these questions and figure out where we can get some of these guys answered.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So there's one question, and I'll just let's see. I'll put myself back up here. There's one question that kind of has a theme to it, which is, you know, how do I? Well, first and foremost, the person who sells the discounted note, why is it that they're selling it to you as a discount, at a discount?
In this case, this was somebody that they had this account a really long time. They wrote the account off on their books some because the customer had originally filed bankruptcy. Then the guy starts paying again perfectly. And so their kind of cost basis in this loan had already been reduced. So they could afford to sell it at a discount because where it was at on their books. But you're asking me, why do people sell a note at a discount? Why do people sell a house at a discount?
Usually there's a motivating factor somewhere in there.
They got a need. They could do more with a lump sum of money than they can a monthly payment. They've got to send a kid to grad school. They've got to pay the IRS. They got to do this. They got to do that, right? I've bought 50,000 discounted notes. All of them had a slightly different reason, but all of them had a motivation. It's unlikely you're going to buy a note from somebody unless they have a motivation to sell. But the standard of you buy notes at a discount is not. It's the same reason people sell a house. They need the money for something else.
So the next question that seems to come up here a couple of times is, if an investor is trying to evaluate buying at a discount, what are the primary kind of things that they're looking at? How do they analyze whether that is a good deal or a bad deal, or what kind of thought process goes there?
Well, that's that punchline answer that it's very difficult for me to give somebody.
Sure.
Right? There is a risk element that I have to weigh into it, which is the buyer and the property. And in other words, what's their likelihood to pay? What's an A grade deal? What's a D grade deal? And that probably helps me determine my desired yield on that investment, right? So if a super A grade deal, and this was a really good A grade deal, we just went and negotiated an inordinately good price because we were in a position to go do that, right? If you bought this deal off a website somewhere, it's not going to trade at 12% yield, but it may trade at a good enough yield, you'd be totally good with doing it. So the second thing is what are the terms of a loan? So if you have a loan that has a low interest rate, 3, 4, 5% interest, if you have a loan that's really long term, like 18 years, 20 years, 25 years, those variables of the lower rate and longer term, mathematically, according to this, are going to drive a deeper discount. So you can't generically say how much is the discount on a note. You have to weigh the risk factors, the risk to reward ratio. You kind of have to weigh in the talent factor. How good are you at finding this note and negotiating it? And then you have to weigh in kind of what the note itself is structured, because that pie's already cooked, right? I'm only buying the pie they've already cooked, and then the discount is just a mathematical equation of figuring out what I need to pay for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm going to take one IRA question here, and then we'll go back to ones for you. There's a question about having a loan servicer and whether that's a prohibited transaction and things like that. So I will say, from an IRA perspective, you can do the note servicing yourself if you want to. Advanta, you have an online portal. You can see when the payments come in. You get notifications, so on and so forth. So when everything is going well, that's it's a pretty passive thing. But it is a situation where you as the account holder are, you're the one looking for the payments and making sure it comes in on time and so on, and addressing that as needed. But your IRA is absolutely allowed, just like Eddie was talking about, to have a loan servicer to make it more passive, and their services, get paid for with the IRA pays for those services, just like any other service for their IRA asset. But you can actually do it by yourself and have it not be a prohibited transaction if you want. You're the decision maker, you're just tracking the investment, but you certainly have the ability to hire a professional to do it, to make it more passive or even just easier for you, that kind of thing. So you have either avenue there. The next question I'm getting is, again, I'm grouping these kind of by theme, is they're talking about how do you source finding these notes to buy? Well,
I mean, there's platforms. We own a platform where people can go find a note. We own a platform called Notes Direct, notesdirect.com. So they can go on there, and then we have notes that we have good underwriting information, and they're notes that we own and they're notes that other people own. So it's not just, I'm not just saying come buy a note that we own. I'm just saying we have other people that put notes up there. So it's like an eBay for notes, right? And that is how a lot of passive people want to go invest in notes, is something like that. There's other platforms that people have to go do that. And then once again, there's people that are involved with real estate investors or in some kind of a network of investors or stuff like that. So there's private Facebook pages where people have notes. There's little networks or groups of where people have notes. And then sometimes you just, I'm sure in your case, you know people that have notes.
It is that, you know, I get that question for other asset classes as well. And it is just, it's a practice of networking as far as I've been able to discover, in terms of you get into a particular specialty that you want to, and you start to find a network. And it sounds like that's kind of how you actually started, you know, at the beginning, Eddie.
Well, we develop marketing techniques to find notes, and I teach those. I've dropped over 5 million pieces of mail to people that own a seller finance note. And I can, and when somebody comes to note school, we can kind of decide what they think is of interest to them. And then we, you know, have various training and guidance ways that we've learned. I mean, gosh, I've been doing it 40 years, right? So we develop processes depending on what you want to do. Like I usually start out, you know, I start out down the trail with somebody saying, what is it you want to be, right? I mean, how active do you want to be? You know, what is your personality? What's your skill sets? How much money do you have in your account? Or what's your resources? And figure out what your resources are, and we can usually guide somebody into the appropriate path of their resources. That's
Gotcha.
kind of how, yeah.
So it's a more custom approach than just a straightaway, this is how you do it.
I mean, look, Note School has taught thousands of people how to do notes. They didn't have all the same story.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this one last question, which you may or may not be able to answer, but after that, I think we better wrap it up since we've run over a little bit. But I do want to say to everybody who's typing in questions, go ahead and type them in. I'll make sure that Eddie and I both see those questions and you get some sort of answer to them. Just for time purposes, I think we'll probably end after this one question. But if you have other things in there that we haven't addressed, please, we will definitely get you the information. So rest assured that that'll happen. And there's also a recording of this webinar, so you'll get an email that'll have the recording on it so that you can review anything that you might have had questions about as well. Cool. So here it is. What is an average yield you'd like to see in today's market? So this is a very timely question.
How good's the deal? If it's an A-grade deal like this, a passive investor, I would tell you 5 or 6% yield is plenty in the money for them to buy a partial. If you bought the whole note, if you could buy that at 8 or 9, you could use passive and money at, you know, selling a partial, and you can still make a very good leverage strategy work. So, you know, that's probably, that deal that you saw today is probably, to go buy it off a website somewhere, probably an 8 or 9 yield is a fair yield on that kind of note. If you want to go sell a partial, you can still go sell a partial to a, you know, burnout landlord, super passive investor that's not trying to figure anything out, and still use a leverage strategy on top of that. If you're going to buy deals that have a little more hair on them, you're going to want a little more yield. You just need to make sure that you have the tolerance and the capacity to manage that investment. So
it really is one of those things that and you mentioned it, and I tried to touch on this at the beginning. It's a match, right? It's the investor matching the asset with what their skills, their comfort level, their a number of things. Yes?
I'm an old cowboy, right? Don't put a beginner rider on a beginner horse learning to be ridden, right? That's a train wreck, right? Don't put a green rider on a green horse, or you're going to have something that's not going to be green.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and say thanks to everybody for joining us. Eddie, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Great to see you. Thank you.
And for sharing your expertise. So thanks a lot, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And like I say, if you have a question that's outstanding, we will get an answer to you. And enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe and be well.